Fellowship of the Broken, Making Sense of 12-Step Recovery by Angelo. Chapter 47, The Spiritual Toolkit. On page 95 of the 4th edition of the Big Book, Bill Wilson makes reference to a kit of spiritual tools to be laid out for inspection by addicts who seek recovery. This spiritual toolkit is not defined in any detail and is widely assumed to be the various actions contained in the 12 steps. The steps certainly contain the core tools, but there are others that can be usefully added in order to produce a complete set that is fit for daily use. The word toolkit is defined as a set of tools that are used for a particular purpose. A tradesman will make use of a toolkit that contains various different tools that are needed to complete specific tasks within an overall job. He will need to be skilled in using each of them so that he can undertake the various tasks as needed. If we apply the same approach to a spiritual toolkit for the purpose of recovery, then this would mean including a range of tools that cover all aspects of the overall process. Based on everything that we've covered so far, we ought to be able to come up with the ideal contents for such a toolkit. This is not intended to be a definitive list of the available tools, but is a suggested list of those tools that we should become skilled in using. There's no point in having a tool in the toolbox if we don't know how to use it effectively. In keeping with the numerical theme of the 12 steps, this suggested toolkit contains 12 tools of recovery. Each of them is a tool in its own right, and each will become increasingly effective through regular practice. 1. Humility. This is the most important tool in the box. There can be no sustainable recovery until we can admit and accept our brokenness. Humility arises when denial ends. This is the basis of step 1, and it is foundational. Humility is not something that we recover from or something that we look back upon as a previous weakness. Humility is the ongoing acknowledgement that the personal ego self is inherently flawed. There are no exceptions, and all humans suffer the same traits to varying degrees. Humility is simply the recognition of personal imperfection. The tool of humility needs to be in constant use. 2. How, H-O-W. This tool is three-pronged and comprises the essential attributes of honesty, open-mindedness and willingness. If any one of these is missing, then the tool will not work. If this is the case, then we need to pray earnestly for the missing piece. We need to use this tool to practice being honest with ourselves and others, being open to new ideas, and being willing to take action against the wishes of the personal ego self. It is too easy to just claim that we are already honest, open-minded and willing. This would be the equivalent of having a tool and not using it. This tool will reap great benefit provided we keep it deployed. 3. Fellowship. Addiction causes isolation and loneliness. It may seem surprising to include 12-step fellowship as part of the spiritual toolkit, but actually it is a vital constituent. We need the love, support and encouragement of each other in order to recover. Many of us have battled with dis-ease for far too long on our own. It takes courage to open ourselves up to being vulnerable, but it is tremendously reassuring to do so with fellow addicts who truly understand. We fear rejection, but actually we are welcomed with open arms. Fellowship obviously includes 12-step meetings, but there are also numerous opportunities for friendships, social events, 12-step conventions, workshops, overseas trips and all manner of other interactions. All we have to do is show up and participate. The tool of fellowship is always available and is accessible worldwide. 4. Sponsor. The personal self is generally reluctant to ask for help, but brokenness and desperation do tend to force the issue. Fellowship is a vital tool for recovery, but it is just part of the toolkit. We need a sponsor to guide us through the 12-step program and share their particular experience, strength and hope with us. A sponsor can variously provide guidance, discipline, emergency support, advice, spiritual understanding, compassion and inspiration. Potential sponsors will have different qualities and varying availability, so we need to choose this particular tool carefully. The general advice is to choose a sponsor who demonstrates the spiritual characteristics that we aspire to. Having made our choice, we should use this important resource as much as we can. The primary activity with a sponsor is to work through the 12-step program. 5. Literature. Each fellowship has its own set of approved literature. It makes sense to obtain our own set as a tool for frequent and easy reference. As well as the Big Book, or its equivalent, there is the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, and also various other publications. In particular, there are several different compendiums of daily quotes and meditations that can be a useful addition to a regular routine of spiritual practice. 6. Just for Today card. This tool is analogous to a Swiss Army knife. The 9 different components can be used together or separately to loosen the grip of personal self-identity. We can only remain abstinent one day at a time, and we can only make spiritual progress one day at a time. If we use this tool every day, then the cumulative effect will be significant. 7. 12-step prayer. A simple and vital tool is to pray in the morning for a sober day and give thanks for sobriety in the evening. And as we've seen, there are also prayers associated with steps 3, 7 and also the St. Francis of Assisi prayer referenced in step 11 in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. In addition, we also have the Serenity prayer, which can be used at any time during the day when we meet challenging circumstances. The combination of these prayers provides an essential tool to keep the process of transformation moving forwards. It is a continual affirmation of our willingness to recover. If we stop praying, then we will stagnate and then start going backwards. 8. Self-awareness. This tool relates to step 10 and includes steps 4 through 9. The components of this tool comprise daily inventory, disclosure, readiness to change, acting as if, preparedness to make amends, and the act of reparation. With constant practice, these elements combine to produce the single tool of self-awareness, the use of which gradually becomes second nature. Another important part of inventory is gratitude. Writing a daily gratitude list helps to bring focus to the positive aspects of our lives and balances up the inventory of shortcomings. Whatever the circumstances of our lives, there are always things to be grateful for. If we let go of our expectations and demands, then everything in life can be seen as a gift. Gratitude arises from humility. A constant attitude of gratitude is a powerful spiritual practice. 9. Self-contemplation. Step 11 provides another multifaceted tool that can eventually become a single practice. The constituent parts are meditation, yoga, prayer, and self-inquiry. Each of these can be practiced separately during the early phases of transformation, but eventually they will begin to merge and become the single tool of self-contemplation. This tool is all about shifting our identity from personal ego self towards non-personal consciousness. The more we practice, the more the constituent parts will converge into one. The goal is to increasingly abide in consciousness as consciousness. 10. Self-forgetting. Step 12 is the practice of forgetting all about the personal ego self, both inside and outside of 12-step fellowship. It takes practice precisely because our human tendency, when identified as the personal self, is to be self-centered and take life personally. Self-forgetting is a tool that has to be used as often as possible. The more we use it, the less selfish we become, and hence the easier and more natural it is to be selfless. Non-personal consciousness is not personal. If we are continuing to worry about ourselves all of the time, then we still have a long way to go on the spiritual journey, regardless of how long we may have been sober. 11. Service. The whole point of spiritual recovery is that our liabilities turn into assets to be used for the benefit of others. Each human being is asleep to their own true nature as consciousness, and once consciousness awakens in one individual, it naturally wants to use this instrument to awaken yet more. This implies being of service to others in any way that supports the process of transformation. 12-step fellowships are independent, voluntary organizations that rely upon individual participants for maintenance and growth. All 12-step meetings have service positions such as greeter, refreshments, literature, treasurer, secretary, and general service representative. There are also various service opportunities at intergroup, regional, and national level. We can be of service simply by agreeing to visit other groups and share our experience, strength, and hope. We can collect telephone numbers and call others to encourage and support them. We can also volunteer to go out on 12-step visits to talk with addicts who have reached out for help. Service is not an optional extra. It is an important part of the spiritual toolkit, and it should be practiced. If we are reluctant to do service, then we have fundamentally missed the entire point of recovery. 12. Sponsorship. The final tool in the box is the specific act of sponsoring others through the 12-step program. One addict working with another is the founding principle of 12-step recovery. We should not underestimate how valuable an activity this can be. Once we've been taken through the steps by a sponsor and become proficient in using the tools, then we are ideally placed to use our experience for the benefit of others. We may lack confidence, but we can take advice from our own sponsor each step of the way. The experience of sponsorship is mutually beneficial because it not only helps those we sponsor, but it also strengthens our understanding of the steps and our commitment to recovery. We are now engaging in recovery in order to help others rather than ourselves. And this is an act of selflessness rather than selfishness. This is a further shift from personal ego self to non-personal consciousness. And as with all of the other tools, we become more skilled in sponsorship the more we practice. If we are reluctant to sponsor others, then we need to ask ourselves why. The honest answer will always be the same. We are still making decisions based on personal self rather than non-personal consciousness. These 12 tools are what I would consider to be the essential toolkit for recovery. Any resistance that we may have in using these tools is itself an indication that we need to be practicing the very things that we are reluctant to do. It is the personal ego self that is reluctant, and it is the personal self that is the cause of all of our suffering, including addiction. This toolkit is readily available, free of charge, and utterly priceless. If we want effective recovery, then we need to use all of it. If we only use half of it, then we will most likely make little progress or no progress at all.